Should you run two pairs of stereo speakers? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics. You know, every now and then I peruse the Facebook groups or the forums and I see people posting pictures of their systems. I love that. I love seeing people prideful of what they own and just showing it off to the world, because you should be happy with the products that you own and that you enjoy. And look, I'm not here to preach to you to tell you you can't do this. You can't run two pairs of stereo speakers at the same time because it's going to destroy whatever. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm just going to give you reasons why you should or should not run two pairs of stereo speakers, whether they're side by side, on independently or on at the same time. So I just want to give you some examples of pictures I found online to show you what I'm talking about. This is some Cerwin-Vega stuff. Like, I guess it's their Pro series. I haven't really seen this in person, but this is like massive speakers, big horns, giant subwoofer. I mean, this setup is way overkill for a room like that, in my opinion. Sure, it'll play super loud. It'll play loud enough to make you deaf within minutes. But are you really getting high fidelity running two pairs of speakers like this? Is this something that you can really discern all the detail in a recording, sit back and let the music take you to different levels and just have the speakers disappear? Or are you just going to get like a loud nightclub kind of sound? And some people like that. I've been to friends' homes that just want a wall of sound. They don't care about high fidelity. They don't care about finesse. They don't care about imaging. If that's your bag, then go for it. But I'm here about accuracy of reproduction and getting you the best fidelity. That's what really Audioholics is all about. A couple more examples here. Here's a Polk system that I found. Two pairs of different Polk speakers side by side, flanking with a TV in the middle. Is this really good? Is this something that you're going to get good sound, whether you're playing two pairs at once or you're playing A, B, and just listening to whatever your preference is at the time? And then finally, hey, I did this myself. I had the RTJ super speakers over here last year. We wanted to do a demo, and I had them next to my RBH SVTRS system. Obviously, I could move my speakers out of the way to evaluate these because my speakers weigh close to 400 pounds each. I did the best I could, and I set up the RTJs to evaluate them in two-channel. Did not run both pairs of speakers at the same time. But this is far from ideal if you really want to evaluate a speaker system, because the speakers are not in the optimal location for the best sound, and you've got speakers next to them. I want to talk a little bit about what happens there. And then finally, I found this clip system here. And same kind of principle. You've got two speakers side by side, presumably playing at the same time for more output. And you got some subwoofers. But I have an idea about what you could do with those speakers. And I'm going to first talk to you about why you shouldn't potentially run two pairs of speakers at the same time if you're really serious about good sound. So the best I could tell you is there's two reasons that I could come up with why you should not do that. The first is comb filtering. And what comb filtering is when you play a source that's the same signal on two different sources, two different speakers, those common frequencies that they're playing called correlated audio, there's going to be cancellations, and you're going to see kind of like a picket fence if you look at the frequency response. And I've measured this many times with speakers in room and especially anechoic. Sometimes in room, you could blur some of that out because of the reflections in the room. But generally speaking, comb filtering is really something you want to try to avoid when you're doing accurate reproduction of sound. It's especially at high frequencies, you're going to get some cancellations at high frequencies. You're going to potentially lose some high frequency response. It's going to kind of just blur the sound. It's not going to sound as cohesive when you're playing multiple sound sources. Now, it works for stereo with a pair of speakers because there's some decorrelated information and the speakers are separated at a much wider distance than just having two speakers side by side. But I'm talking about two left speakers and two right speakers. Comb filtering is definitely not a good idea. And in fact, a lot of loudspeaker companies, when they design speakers, they try to eliminate something similar to comb filter, and it's called acoustical interference. If you see like large arrays of towers that have multiple mid ranges or multiple tweeters, if you put a bunch of tweeters in a cabinet, maybe two tweeters or three tweeters, and you don't shade some of those tweeters, so they're all playing the same exact signal, you're going to get some pretty untidy behavior off axis. And I've heard speakers that had, two tweeters in them, and as soon as when you sit down and stand up, you lose the high frequencies. It's just not consistent. You really mess up your vertical dispersion or your horizontal dispersion. That's why a lot of people don't like MTMs for center channels horizontally located, because those two woofers will cause lobing effects. So if you sit, more than 20 or 30 degrees off axis, you're going to get cancellations and it's not going to sound good. You're not going to hear really good dialogue intelligibility. Similar process here, similar concept when you're running two pairs of speakers at the same time. Not such a great idea if you want accurate sound reproduction. Second reason is, by doing this, by having two pairs of speakers side by side, you're essentially creating a larger baffle by having those two speakers together. So even if you're only running, I see this on the forums, I see, I only run this pair of speakers for this music and that pair of speakers for other music. It doesn't matter. Those two speakers side by side are interacting with each other, because now you've widened the baffle and you're damaging the imaging that those two speakers by themselves, properly placed without anything next to them, would have much better chance of giving you good imaging. And what I mean by imaging is those speakers would literally disappear in your room, and you're left with just listening to this stereo that sounds like it's coming, right at you. You can't really locate the speakers. You get a really strong phantom center, so you hear the dialogue in the middle. That's magic. And when you put two speakers side by side like that, you lose some of that magic. That's why I'm not a huge fan of doing A/B listening tests between two pairs of speakers, because you're putting both speakers at a disadvantage by having them next to each other. And there's companies like Harman that have a speaker shuffler that actually rotate the speakers. So that way you're only listening to one speaker at a time, and there's nothing to the side of the speaker that's messing with the dispersion characteristics of that speaker. So those are the two reasons. Number one, you get comb filtering when you're running two pairs of speakers at the same time, playing the same signal. And then you also create a larger combined baffle, because now each speaker sees that wider baffle, and then you get some off-axis behavior that's not as good. You damage the imaging properties of those speakers. So I wanted to go back to that Klipsch one. And, a system like this, I mean, I'm sure these are fine speakers, but think about this. This is a home theater setup, right? Whoever set this up would be much better served if they took the best speaker in this bunch, which I think are the bigger ones, use those as your stereo pair, and then relocate those slimmer towers as wide channels. Wide channels are really good in Dolby Atmos for movie effects. Hopefully we'll get the upmixer an update in the future where we could employ the wide channels for that as well. But why not repurpose those extra pair of speakers, put them as a wide channel if you're in an Atmos system. If you're not in an Atmos system, you could always put them as surround channels. I'm not a huge fan of putting towers as surround channels, because you tend to be too close to a tower speaker that's at ear level where your couch is, and then you can localize them more. But if your primary focus is music and you want to have really great sound and your couch is reasonably far away from them, you could use those as surround speakers. And back in the old days, they used to have quad. It would be like a 4-channel stereo, but it was a discrete signal that was going there. You weren't just playing the stereo signal repeated to the back speakers. So generally speaking, in home environments, I don't recommend running two pairs of speakers. And if you are going to do that, you might want to put those towards the back of the room and run them at a much lower level, just to give you some extra fill, and perhaps put some DSP in there as well if you want to run some effects. And of course, there's processors that allow you to do this. And I don't want to go to that level because that's beyond the scope of this. I just wanted to basically talk to you guys about why you should not run two pairs of speakers if you're concerned about accurate reproduction. Now, I know I'm going to get comments below saying, I run two pairs of speakers and it just rocks my house. I love the sound. It sounds large. It sounds big. That's great. I'd love to hear from you if you're running that. But my point here is if you're really concerned about getting good imaging characteristics in your stereo and you want accurate reproduction and you want to hear all the detail in the recordings, it's very difficult to pull that off if you're running two pairs of stereo speakers, especially if they're side by side in the front of the room. Not something that I recommend, but I'd love to hear your comments. Guys, if you like this video, please thumb it up, please share it, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics or ask questions. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.